Hello and welcome to the Goodnight channel. I'm Jake.
And I'm PJ.
And tonight we're talking about Game 7 of 52. You're going to have to read the title. I can't say it.
Okay. Dr. Langskolov, a diamond, an emerald, a fancy emerald, the curse of the tiger, and a heist.
Got it. Perfect. Print it.
Because you said that. I still don't have the note. I never wrote down the names.
I have the name, and that's all I have.
Oh, here. I'll say it.
Oh, do you not know it?
I really don't. I didn't.
Oh.
I promise. I didn't write it down anywhere. Dr. Langskolov, the tiger, and the terribly cursed emerald, a whirlwind heist. Oh, that's pretty close.
Yeah, you were almost there. That's why I thought you had it written. You were just fucking around.
No, I don't ever fuck around. I'm a very serious individual.
That's why you didn't write the title of the game down?
Yeah, I only wrote the Stanley Parable.
I mean, all I wrote were the endings of the Stanley Parable, so I remembered them.
So game 7 of 52 is technically Dr. Langskolov, but we also played Beginner's Guide, and we also replayed Stanley Parable, because we needed to cheat because one of us can't play Chrono Trigger in a timely fashion.
I wonder who.
It's me.
So, this is just a filler episode because all I want to talk about is Chrono Trigger.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna finish it. It's right there. It's on. It's right in front of us.
I was like, oh, he's gonna ask for it. I'm gonna bring it over. It's gonna be dead.
It's gonna be dead.
But then I thought of this elaborate plan because I'm like, oh, I got it. I'll save him. I'll bring my cable because it's a USB cable and my battery, and he'll be able to play.
Oh my!
And everything will be all right in the world.
Yeah. Instead, I just listen to depressing world news really, really loudly. Anyway, video games.
Video games. So where do we want to get started? Stanley Parable?
Yeah. Okay. So I think we should start both of the Beginner's Guide and what is this game called? Dr. Langskolov were made by the two people who made Stanley Parable. Each one half of the designer and writer.
Yes.
So Davey Redden and other person, William Poe. Oh, I remember. Wow. I didn't write that down. I remember it. Because I'm
Impressive.
Smart. So we're going to talk about Stanley Parable first because they both really, really heavily draw on Stanley Parable and their experiences making it. So, going back to replay the Stanley Parable, what did you think of the game again?
Can you say it with a little more enthusiasm?
So, going back to play the Stanley Parable.
All right, perfect. I thought going back to it that I was going to, be bored by it again. Not again. I thought that going back to it I'd be bored because I've already beaten this game. But it was kind of refreshing to realize, I'd forgotten a lot about these endings. This is a weird game because I measure it in endings, which I don't normally do. Normally I beat a game once and I move on, but this game is addictive in letting you beat a game over and over again and find little secrets.
I think that's a big part of the game. I mean, their marketing campaign just before the game came out was more endings, less endings, more Stanley, less Stanley. Like the endings and the fact that you play through them and you count them, I think is a big part of the game.
Yes. I have a question for you.
Okay. Shoot, buddy. Pew pew.
Did you play the mod?
Yeah, I did. I played the mod like right when it released.
I don't remember if I played the mod.
Really? The mod actually scared me at one point.
Yeah?
The moment where you take the escape route on the all yes route, like where you go shut down the machine man. If you take that dumb little escape route and he's like, Stanley, you can go backwards still. The door is not closed. You can just walk backwards. And the only thing down there is his death. And then you get down there and it's that machine that's going slam,
Squishing,
slam, slam, slam. I believe in the mod, it didn't originally do what it does in the game, which is...
Freeze frame.
No, it doesn't freeze frame. It brings you to a museum. And you go through...
It freezes right before it crushes you, and then
it freezes right
and
before...
then a lady voice comes on.
Right. And I might be wrong about that, but I'm almost positive that the mod didn't have you go through like a little museum. It might have. If it is, write me a letter.
P.O.
You
box,
know this already. Yeah, P.O. Box, fuck you. Because I don't care.
Wish. I wish we could have that P.O. box.
But yeah, I really liked that ending where she gets talking again, and then the thing starts going, and it closes on you.
Yeah.
In the original mod, actually, like, gave me a really big spook. I don't know why. It just felt really, really dark.
It is.
I mean, it and the ending where you go down the stairs seem to be the darkest, most malicious endings.
Not the one where you kill yourself?
That's not malicious. It's dark, but it's not malicious.
Okay.
Like,
that's true.
The stairwell ending and the ending that we were just talking about, it really feels like the narrator hates Stanley.
Yeah.
So it really feels like the game designers hate the player.
I mean, it seemed like he hates you when you jump off that thing. He's like, Stanley, why?
Yeah, but he's upset because he had more hopes for you.
That's true.
Whereas these ones, it's more like, Stanley, you're so fucking dumb. You were on the right path. Like, it feels much more like that. Like, you're arbitrarily breaking rules. Whereas the other one is like, you're breaking all the rules, so let's go find out what's going to happen because there's no more rules left.
Yeah. So the traditional ending of that game, the mind control ending, the classic ending, what would that be considered?
I would say the all yes ending. I don't think any of the endings are the correct ending.
The all yes ending, so
because you say yes to everything.
Yeah, you go through, you follow his directions all the way to the end where you find out there's a mind control room and a big button that says on or off.
Yeah,
and you could choose to say on or off, and if you say off, do you get teleported, or do you go backwards? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. You you end up going to like a small cutscene where a big giant fucking door opens, like impossibly big, and it's just a countryside.
Yeah,
and the game ends. It's pretty weird. I didn't really prefer that ending.
Well, no one prefers that ending, I don't think. Because
I think that's what inspires you to play the game differently.
Well, I think that ending is the ending that you're going to get that ending because you're saying yes to everything that the narrator says, and so you get the turn off the mind control. It's so obviously ironic and not supposed to be satisfying at all.
Yeah. I think I wrote art ending, but I didn't get the art ending.
Nobody
it's the
gets
opposite.
The art ending. One person on YouTube gets the art ending, and then everyone watches it.
The other ending that goes with it, though. Do you know which one?
No.
So the art ending is you jump off of this moving platform and you go into the blue door instead of the red door or something like that. Mm-hmm. And eventually you get to this part where the narrator's trying to explain that video games are art by making this game with a baby going into fire, and you press a button. And he wants you to complete it in 4 hours. And it's literally the most unbearable, the most unbearable thing in the world. It's not only is there a baby crying constantly, but the button makes this really loud sound.
And the baby resets every time you press it. So it just does the same 2 second of a voice clip over and over and over again.
It's so bad. And like after 2 hours, he makes another game. I don't remember the other game.
Yeah, neither do I.
But I know you have to hit another button. So like this whole process gets drawn out even longer. So like at first you could script it to do it like a little bit because you could do an auto click. But then that happens where you have to turn around and hit another button on the other side of the room.
Yeah.
It seems impossible. And I want to say the narrator even comments on setting up a script to do it. Like, because he knows that's probably the only way you'll beat it. And that if you beat it that way, you get the art ending. But if you go the other way, he takes you through a bunch of really weird things, like different video games.
Yeah.
Like he takes you into Portal, he takes you into Minecraft, and Minecraft's really interesting because he builds a little house, and it's only like a 1x1 house, and you get inside, and then you get back out, and you go down into a cave.
And he comments on how it's too open-ended. Yeah,
it's too open, even though their version of Minecraft is completely closed because there's no jump button. But it's just super weird because I had forgotten how detailed it is, that little area, because I went down into the cave and you could hear like spider sounds.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, this is way too detailed for some reason. And then you go into the Portal one where he doesn't have a portal, so he just opens up the glass. Yeah. And you come out and he goes, oh, yeah, this is much better, like a puzzle. And you move the box, and then the elevator is about to open, but instead the elevator just leaves and you jump down. And then I don't remember what happens after that. I forgot
And
suddenly.
actually, probably the most interesting point of that whole ending, which is first you fall into a bunch of unused levels.
Oh yeah, that's right.
A bunch of
Like
partially
the alpha
created levels.
the alpha levels.
And then you fall into the mod at the end.
Oh yeah.
Because those are all the mod textures, because they're I think the CSGO.
Yeah, it looks really
or
ugly.
the CS Office, but I don't really know. But yeah, you fall into the mod. You fall into the mods version of Stanley Parable, and you walk around with no narrator, and you walk towards the light because there's a light on, because you figure, oh, I'll walk towards the light. That's the end of the game, and you walk towards it, and it's Stanley's office from the mod again. And nothing happens. And you walk back out and you wander around, and then the game just ends. And then the narrator comments, yeah, you probably feel really lost right now because there's nothing here. Without me, you're nothing. Without any game direction, you can't do anything. You can't create anything without me. And it's to me, a lot of this game is very, very obviously symbolic. Sometimes it doesn't hit very hard, or sometimes it's a little too on the nose. I like that ending most of all. Not most of all the endings, but not most of all in general. I don't know why I said most of all. So let me just redact it.
Because there's only one ending better than it.
Which?
The broom closet ending.
Anyway. I really like that it's kind of this... Because I don't know if you've ever made anything where you're trying to direct a player through anything, but you really do get this sense where you go, oh, okay, what's he going to do? Oh, okay, well, if he fucks around, he can't do anything. He's got to follow me. I'm the god here. You do get a little bit of a god complex whenever you create anything game-related like that because it's so psychological. You know that if you don't give the player direction, they're not doing anything. They're nothing. Yeah. They're nothing without you.
Yeah.
And I think that section really capitalizes on that. A lot of this game is about game designers and developers versus the player.
Mm-hmm.
I would say all of the game is about that.
I think that's the common theme.
Yeah,
that we're going to get into. So yeah, I think that's one of my favorite endings.
Yeah.
Of all of them, except for maybe the adventure line.
The adventure line's really good.
I think the adventure line is the absolute best one because it kind of combines all the different elements of the game into one, which I really like. The adventure line ending, I forget how it starts, what sequence you do to make it start.
Yeah, I know you.
I think it's random.
No, it's not random.
It's not?
No. None of the endings are random.
There's sometimes that there's a different hallway though.
Yeah, but it's not. That's not what it is.
Because I thought there was only one time that you could. Because there's one time where there's a door open. That's the only time you can get that ending is when that one door's open one time.
No.
I'm almost positive there's an ending where you need a door open.
I believe so too, but that is not the adventure line ending.
No, not the. I don't think it's the adventure line ending, but yeah, there's an ending.
I think so too. I really don't remember.
Whatever, but yeah, eventually, you do a sequence. It's not the escape one. It's not the bomb one.
No, the bomb one's really.
It's not when you unplug the phone. It's not when you answer the phone. What are the other ones? It's not down the staircase. It's not the escape pod. Not the broom closet. Fuck, I don't remember how it starts.
Oh, you know what it is? Is you say no, and then you go down, you go through the break room, and then when he's like, all right, well, now that Stanley went through the breakdown.
He took the left.
You take
the first
left, and then there's a little elevator there, and you go down that elevator.
Oh, the elevator.
And then the narrator's like, I didn't write anything for this. So
yeah.
I don't know where you are. And then he starts resetting over and over and over again.
Well, he gets down there and he's like, you go this way. And then he's like, we're back here. So then he's like, reset. And then it gets crazier and crazier until eventually you get the adventure line. You're right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And the adventure line is the best thing ever.
The adventure line's good because it has a character of its own.
Yeah.
For some weird reason. Like when it comes through the
ceiling tiles and comes back. Yeah. So you follow this line around the room, around the office, going all through these hallways, through all these things you kind of seen on your other playthroughs. And you're just going through, and eventually it takes me to my favorite part. I took a screenshot of it, and I wish I wrote down the name of it, but there's this room with filing cabinets, and then there's like a little hallway. And if you follow the line exactly, and you go in that you see the hallway, and you look down, it's this huge hallway. It's gigantic. And in there, it's like, on the wall, I think it says like human resources or something like, or complaints, something like that. And it's just, and you see this huge window with filing cabinets that are just miles long. But as soon as you walk through there and you follow the line, you come out and you turn around because you realize you're in the same room that you were just in. You turn around and that hallway is completely gone. It's one of my favorite.
There's a lot of quote unquote non-Euclidean spaces in this. They really take full advantage of the fact that this came out after Portal 2 or
yes,
right around that time.
Yeah, it was definitely around that time.
There's a lot of hallways that loop back on themselves. Like
there's hallways that loop back, but that one in particular is just because it's like you can see the whole thing, like where it is, and it's tiny. So when you go up, you don't realize that there's a giant hallway there.
Yeah,
and then it disappears. So you go, was that even there? It's very unique to the game, that one. Like otherwise, you have a lot of hallways that just keep twisting. You go. Yeah, taking multiple rights and like those are
especially
fun, but that one has it like twice. Yeah. He's like, oh no, turn all the way around because you get to a dead end at one point and it's a whole different hallway.
Yeah, exactly.
So you keep going. Eventually, he talks about a fern. I don't know why. I forget why, but
he just says it's very important for later.
Yeah, he's like, remember this. It's not. Eventually, you leave the line. You come back to the line comes back, and he's like, oh, ignore him, which is a really funny line. And then the line leaves again, and you keep going. And eventually you go into a room, and it's this big white sign, and it says the confusion ending.
Yeah.
And he's saying things that are being read. Like as he comes in, he goes, it's at the sequence on this board. It's showing the entire sequence of what you're doing to get the confusion ending. And he's saying the part where the narrator talks about the confusion ending sign.
Yeah.
Like it's just...
It's very this whole game is meta.
Yeah, I was about to say.
It's it's talking about games and making games and being in a game and the player interaction with the designer. And there are lots of games that do that actually. The reason Stanley Parable stands out is because the narrator is an actual character. He's not just a stand-in for the designer. He's a stand-in for lots of different kinds of designers, first of all. And he has his own little motivations that you understand because a lot of these games, these meta games, tend to walk away with this feeling that this narrator character, or whoever the character is supposed to be who's the designer, is talking down to the player. But not in a way that is in a character, like not in a character motivational kind of way. More of just, I'm the designer. Don't you get it yet? You should understand by this point, I'm the designer. I'm going to be talking, like, they're talking about one little concept over and over and over again. Whereas in the Stanley Parable, they're talking about all these different concepts, and the narrator always feels like a real person, like a real designer, not just one, kid who decided to make a mod in his room. Like, that ending, what's unique about it, comparatively to a lot of the other endings, is that he's working with Stanley. Stanley and him are working together to try to create an ending. And they're both kind of like, they're not bantering back and forth, but the narrator's bantering with you, and he feels nice. Whereas in some endings, he feels really, really, really malicious. Or just uncaring. And some, like the one you were talking about before, where you commit suicide because you have no other option, the narrator feels sad. He doesn't want you to do that. He got you to make a thing, and he wants you to stick with it for a little while. You feel the plight of the designers, unlike most other metagames, because they took a lot of time to give the narrator the perfect amount of comedy and human characterization, which I think... Do you have anything else to say about Stanley Parable?
Not really.
I was going to say that I thought that was a good segue into the beginner's guide.
Next up, the beginner's guide.
Next up, choo-choo, on the Stanley Parable Super Goodnight Channel Special, the beginner's guide.
Yay.
Cue it up, Johnny.
And then music plays. The beginner's guide. is a game from Davey,
Yes.
one of the two creators of the Stanley Parable. And this one's a bit different. Similar formula to the Stanley Parable where it's a narrator and a player. But this time it's kind of like a demo of someone's levels that they like made at one point and kind of abandoned. And he goes through and he explains the game creation methods, like, or at least it starts that way. You're like, oh, like that's kind of cool. Like this is someone's first level and how they figured it out. And like, you know, they have like their little things they do, their little quirks to their level making. And then it starts getting kind of dark along the way. The Davey explains that he's showing these levels made by someone named Coda, who I guess he worked with at some point. I mean, it doesn't really. It's not really clear.
Coda's a friend of his.
Yeah, it sounded like they went to school together, but maybe not. Maybe I just implied that to myself.
Yeah, they don't really say. They just say that they're friends. I think.
And they kind of just we go through these levels. They're all kind of special, a little weird and different. So Davey explains how Coda's games work and his design philosophies behind them. How he's building these little prisons and he's doing these little things. And he has this little puzzle at the end of each level with a door that has a switch on it. And you hit the switch, the door opens, you go inside, but there's no more switch. So you have to step back outside, hit the switch, go back inside, and then there's another switch. He says it's really important, but I never really understood it.
It's like letting go. You have to move on. You have to close off that chapter of your life and then move on.
Man, that's really good. Thank you. Like I got the part in between, like the darkness between projects.
Well, and it's also like you have to close that door, or otherwise the middle door won't open. Period.
Oh my god!
So you have to.
So deep. Fuck. I got this all fucked up. I should just rewrite all of it.
I should just rewrite the beginner's guide.
No, it's so good. So, yeah. There's a lot of deep meanings in the stuff that you see in this one, like that. I didn't even consider that's what that was symbolizing. I don't know if they talked about it. Maybe I missed it because I
don't remember either. I think so. The second it came up, I was like I felt like I got what he was trying to say.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he talked about it afterwards. I have a feeling he did.
Maybe, and I just missed it on my second playthrough. Yeah. So eventually, though, you go through a bunch of these levels and you get to this really important one. I feel like it's really important. It's this level where it's like a house cleaning level. You go in this little house and there's like this block person, and he's like, "Hey, can you help me clean my house?" And it's kind of like this like little symbolism of like cleaning up his life and trying to put things back together. It seemed like he kind of like spent all this time creating these really abstract things. He needed something really normal to kind of like balance out, because I think just before this he'd been making these prison games, and this was like his like, oh, I'm done, no more of that setup.
Yeah, I think it should be said real quick.
Go ahead.
Davey is walking you through this not as a narrator. Or, I mean, he's walking you through it as a narrator, but not in the sense that the Stanley Parable walks you through as a narrator. Like, the narrator in Stanley Parable is a character in and of himself who has different motivations depending on your playthroughs. In the beginner's guide, Davey is your narrator, playing Davey. Like, he's playing himself.
It's like almost like a commentary track.
Yeah, that's really what it feels like. It feels like it's a commentary track. And I would go so far as to say that beginner's guide is not a meta game like how Stanley Parable is. I would venture to say it's arguable that it's not a meta game at all, because it's not really it's not a game about games, because it's not a game in the first place. It's more of a narrative about games, if that makes sense. Like, it never feels like it's trying to be a game. Like, Stanley Parable is trying to parody this me making a game, you're playing a game type deal, but Davey right from the get-go goes, I know, lizards. Right from the get-go, he goes, oh, okay, you're walking through a series of unfinished levels.
Yeah.
That never feels like you're playing a game. That feels like you're, because you're not inhabiting the role of Stanley. You're inhabiting the role of you,
the
playing
observer
through the level. Yeah.
It's clear that like you aren't beating things and doing puzzles like you are in Stanley Parable, where there's a little bit of the gaminess to it.
Yeah.
Where this doesn't have any of that. It's just these like little unfinished levels, like small narratives. So it's right about that level with the house cleaning that I start to realize like that the Coda person that he's talking about doesn't really exist. Like, it just seems so strange that he has all these insights into Coda's mind that he constantly like refers to. And it's like, you don't know that. And you could be making it up, but it seems so pungent, like he really means it, like he knows it, that it feels like he's talking about himself and he kind of forgets that he's talking. He's like, oh, I'm talking about this guy Coda, not me. So he starts to like chip away at the facade that he's built up, that there's another person. And then after that, like you start to go into these really depressing games or levels. And it's like, he's like arguing that like he can't keep making these games. He can't keep doing the same thing. Like at the same part, which good thing I wrote this down.
Gonna die.
Good thing I wrote this down. The dark place. There's like those two doors we were talking about. There's a dark place in between them, and he says that you can't stay there forever. That you have to move on. You have to keep moving on to another thing, to another project.
Yeah.
You can't get stuck in these little ruts, and that's when it's, again, like I'm saying, is it starts to become clear. Like, oh, how would he know this about his friend? Like, I wouldn't know those kinds of details on their thought process. Like, if I played that game without the commentary, I don't think I would have grasped that at all. I went, oh, it's a little door puzzle. Moving on. Like, I wouldn't have really gotten the symbolism, I don't think, of these weird little levels. It seems very detailed for someone to have grasped all that.
No, like, the end of the game is it reveals that Davy's been going back and editing the levels a little bit.
Well, he even explains it as you go along.
Eventually.
He's like, oh, you hit enter so you can complete this.
Right, but he says Coda's putting these light posts in.
No, it's the opposite.
No. He says there's all these light posts at the end. I think that's this. And then when you get to the end of the level where you get to the end of the game, just before the end of the game, you see all these messages left by Coda that are like, stop putting shit in my levels.
Yeah. Well, you said the opposite.
What do you mean?
You said Coda was putting them in, but no.
I was saying that Davy was saying that Coda was putting them in. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what he says as you're playing the game.
Yeah. And
then it gets revealed later that it wasn't Coda putting them in. It was Davy putting them in.
Well, again, I think that's because it's one person.
Well, I mean, okay. There's two kinds of narratives that go on with the beginner's guide, which makes it very confusing to talk about.
Yeah.
One is the narrative of this guy named Davy and his friend named Coda. And then there's the second narrative, which is a guy named Davy Redden who really exists, and his not alter ego, but him trying to tell you something about himself through this person named Coda who's not real.
Yeah.
So it's hard to talk about which beginner's guide you're talking about, like
the real one or the fake one.
Exactly. Well, because one of them is like the kind of the game, and it kind of wraps around into the meta narrative kind of stuff. Whereas the other one is really just Davy Redden talking about himself, or I might be saying his name wrong.
Sure.
If I am, write me a letter. But when it comes to stuff like him saying, the door puzzle, like him having too much insight into Coda's mind, really plays into the central theme of the game narrative versus the actual narrative.
Yeah.
Well, the game narrative versus the real life narrative, I guess I should say. Whereas the game narrative is Coda telling this person, stop looking into my stuff so much. It's for me for a reason.
Yeah.
You can't look into every little thing and project yourself onto it and try to pretend like it means I'm feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
It brings me down because now I have all of your projected feelings on me. It's a big responsibility to hold.
Mm-hmm.
it's letting go, it's turning around and being in the darkness. You have to let go. You have to move on to all this kind of stuff. Or I think it means this, this, and this. Or he doesn't even frame it like that. I don't think he says, I think it means this once in the whole game.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
He makes
like
it very,
I usually am.
I mean, I just played it, and I'm pretty sure he just says, this is what it means.
Exactly.
There's no speculation. That's why I'm thinking it's very much himself. That's what I pulled away from the game, is that he's talking about himself.
Well, I think when you look at the Davy and Coda game, that is like the central narrative of the game. If you want to look at it as like a central narrative, that is very clearly a criticism on players. Like, players do this. They look at all my stuff. They add stuff to it.
Yeah. They
add thoughts to it that I might not even have, and it's a work that I made.
You know, it's kind of interesting that you bring that up like that, because it's kind of like how Undertale has turned out, where there's all this extra narrative to a game that didn't need it.
Exactly. I think it happens to a lot of games.
Yeah, and I think it's the creator coping with what people do with their creation.
Exactly. Which is an especially large problem in games.
Yeah.
Where the player has control that you as a designer can't possibly comprehend. Like, you can't possibly plan for every single conceivable series of events.
It's really cool because this game is going into that, but it just came off of the Stanley Parable that kind of does plan out you doing any conceivable thing, such as going out the window.
Yeah. But even that is predetermined.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is something they talk about.
It's like a meta moment. Like, oh, the player broke the game. How do you get out of here? Like, it kind of goes back and forth. Like, here is a game that shouldn't be broken. It's not intended to be broken. And the thoughts on that versus Stanley Parable, which allows you to break it in ways to really explain what players do when they break games. Like, because in that ending, which I'm going to quickly talk about, you have a yes or no question, and it's like, do you think this is a dumb thing? And I said yes. No, I said no. I was like, it asked if, are you done with this bit? And I said no. And he goes, yeah, well, you're going to spend like the next 15 minutes listening to me talk and wondering if that's exactly the same answer you would have gotten if you pressed yes. And it's really good because you're like, oh, yeah, I am thinking that.
Well, a lot of the endings are kind of...
And then if you do press yes, you get the heaven ending, which is horrible.
Wait, what?
Isn't that where you get the heaven ending?
No. That's if you do the 6 inputs.
Oh, whatever.
That's not the heaven ending.
You're right.
I assume it's probably the same both ways, but I really don't know. I should have gone.
No. The heaven ending is definitely the buttons.
No. I mean, I don't know if it's the same.
It's not. It's not. They're different.
No. I mean, if you press yes or if you press no, I don't know if it's the same narration.
They're both different.
Oh, they are?
Yes, that's what I'm telling you.
Oh, okay.
Because I did it.
No, you do go to the heaven ending.
No, you do get different things, because if you do no, it doesn't end. Mm-hmm. And if you press yes, you get an ending. Yeah, I don't remember what the ending was, sadly.
A big conceit of the Stanley Parable is that, yes, there's a million endings. No, it doesn't matter, because we made all of the endings specifically so you will get them.
Yeah.
Like, that's a big thing. You can't, as much as you'd like to break out of this box, which is funny because usually the first ending I think most people will get in the Stanley Parable is the all yes ending, and then probably the all no ending right after.
Yeah. Or the opposite.
Yeah.
I figured those two...
Those are going to be their
because I did all no the first time I played it.
First and second endings. The all yes ending in Stanley Parable is, oh, you think you have choice, but you really don't. Like, you know, you're just following me. You're just saying yes to everything I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't really have choice. And then the other endings are kind of you going, oh, fuck you, I do have choice. And then the central conceit of Stanley Parable being, no, you really don't have choice. But back to Beginner's Guide.
Yeah.
The game's narrative, where it's Davy and Coda, is about players. But I think the Davy read-in talking about kind of himself, where he is literally talking about himself, is about him and designers.
I felt like his discussion he was having was the loss of creative control.
Yeah, but that's about him.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like if you look at it like Davy and Coda are two different people, it's really about the player, because Davy is taking the role of a player.
Yeah.
But if you look at it like Davy talking about himself, it's more of a person trying to make a thing for people and his central conflict with it in his brain.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
So it's kind of about him and a game designer.
Yeah. I think it's a different perspective since you're more of a game designer than I am, and I'm a player. Like, I was seeing it as something else.
Well,
slightly. Not that different, but it's different slightly.
Like, it hit me a lot. I feel like the first time for sure, it hit me a lot harder because I was doing exactly what he was talking about because I'm so used to it. Mm-hmm. I'm so used to looking at everything and going, what do they mean? Because I hope that when I make something, somebody thinks the same thing. I hope for that communication. Mm-hmm. And I have no control over whether someone does it all wrong or not.
Yeah.
I have no control over that, and it's a really scary thought.
Yeah.
And, like, you've seen me, like, I don't really create anything. I make all these little pieces.
Yeah.
And you see me get really, really, like, when we were trying to do a little thing at that one point, that doesn't make any sense.
No.
I was trying to make a board game for a really long time, and it just wasn't going anywhere, and I was just getting really, really obsessed with these couple of ideas.
And not really opening up and seeing the difference. Kind of like the prison games.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it felt like. So all these little things felt so real to me, and then when the ending happens and you go, oh, like, I'm putting so much, I'm projecting all my thoughts onto this person. I'm providing them so much responsibility because they don't think the same thing that I think. Mm-hmm. But I'm still passing on that stuff to them. It hit me pretty hard because of that.
Yeah.
My biggest issue with the beginner, well, one of two of my biggest issues with the beginner's guide, I'm going to talk about in the conclusion to this whole thing.
So, after the house,
mm-hmm.
sorry, the cleaning level. So after the cleaning level, you're taken to a stage level where there's this dialogue being fed to him, and pretty much whatever you answer, it's wrong. And it's this really strange little commentary that he's having, like Coda's having with himself, because these games are made by him for himself, technically. And it's everything he says, the director of this little stage play is saying, that doesn't sound right. And then around this time is when in the game that I'm starting to think that Coda is becoming reclusive, and he's just kind of focusing on this and making these levels, and he's not really doing anything else. He's not really going out and seeing people. And so later I think right after that sequence, he has another conversation with himself via the game where he's trying to come to terms with it, and he says that he can't keep making these, and that he's having this weird conversation. It's really strange. Like, it's hard to explain without actually playing the sequence. Like, there's this, like, it's kind of like Pink Floyd's The Wall, where he's building like the wall between himself. But in this sequence, it's the reverse, where these walls where he's being told to do things by some thing, like the game. It's a really strange sequence. Like I said, you'd have to really play it to understand what I'm talking about. But the sequence is telling him to be positive and not be negative, because he's like, oh, I can't do anything. And it's like, no, you have to say this. And it doesn't give him the choice to say negative things, I think.
Well, it doesn't matter if you say them.
Yeah, the game just continues either way. And it like breaks away all these like things, like it's like these walls of text that say all this negative things that he's thinking about himself. And it's like him coming to terms with like his depression and like his like reclusiveness. Like, he's trying to get away, but when you're sad, when you're depressed, you tend to become reclusive, and you don't want to talk to somebody about it. You don't want to get help because you want to solve it on your own, but you can't solve it on your own for the most part. A lot of these things, you have to talk to someone. You have to vent. You have to understand the problem. And he's not able to do that. He keeps delving deeper into this depression and making these games to try and solve his own depression, and it's just not working. And his games become less creative at this point. Like, they're very strange and abstract now. Whereas before, like, they were levels, and now they're like sequences of conversations that he's having with himself. And I believe this is when he starts it starts what is essentially Pink Floyd's The Trial, where he's on trial with himself. Like he becomes a machine. So the player interacts with a machine that's calling itself Coda, and it's like, yeah, this is Coda. He's a machine now. He's not really interacting with people. He's doing his thing that makes him happy, or supposedly makes him happy. And so the machine is telling him, it gives, or sorry, there's like, I want to call it a reporter, but it's not. You're as the player plays this like person, like what would be the judge in the Pink Floyd reference I keep making.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. It's just what it made me think of. Like it just had the same symbolism, like the way that movie plays out some of its stuff towards the end, and but like he's asking the machine, like, what are you going to do? And it doesn't matter what you answer. Like you can say you're going to destroy yourself or destroy the game. It doesn't really matter, I don't think. And so, like, it comes out, and the player character for that sequence talks to a crowd, and he goes, he's not going to do anything. He's just going to be worthless. So we should destroy the game or something like that. It's some really strange sequence that I never would have understood if I didn't look into it too much.
It's around this part where I go, oh, this game is really fucking pretentious.
Yeah.
Really, really fucking pretentious. And I was really not liking it at this point. I was like, this is like, I get it. Like, it's just, it hammers home the point so ferociously hard that you can't help but look at it and go, wow, what a pretentious piece of shit. Like, I get it. Your life's hard. Everyone's lives are hard. Like,
yeah,
I don't understand. Like, it has this moment for me where I just can't. I almost can't handle it.
It to me, it symbolized that this is the part where Davey is turning off Coda, the machine, and he's going out to talk to people. But in doing so, he loses his creative mind, like the ability to create levels and games and stuff. Like, to be social, he just kind of doesn't have like it seemed like his depression was creating these things, the prisons, the stuff like that was his creativity, was his sadness, and to be happy and to go out and do stuff is what's taking away his creativity.
I didn't mean like this part was pretentious. I meant
the game is part, you figured out that it was being pretentious.
Well, no, I had the idea that it was probably being pretentious, but at this point I was like, oh yeah, this whole piece of trash is pretentious. And I thought it all the way up until the end.
Yeah.
And then all of my thoughts kind of reversed on it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think that's the point.
Pretty hard. Yeah, that's definitely the point of the game, which really elevates it above what it actually is. Like, what you think it is in the first hour and 50 minutes get completely... Is it 2 hours long? Whatever.
No, it's 60 minutes long.
Whatever. The first, 80% of the game, you think it's this pretentious piece of shit art game. Like, all the art games. And it is an art game, but...
With a message.
With a message that's completely different than what you think.
Yeah.
And that really surprised me, because I really thought it was a pretentious piece of shit. And then it kind of explains it all. And for once, you don't look back at that other 80% and go, oh, well, what a waste of time. I wish you would have just gotten to it. I wish you would have just gotten to the point faster. Mm-hmm. It really informs the point, because you spend so much time going, oh, whatever. Like, yeah, I get it. Great. Like, you're so sad about it. Yeah, who fucking cares about Coda, whether he's real or not? Who cares? And then you get to that point and you go, where it explains that it's really about, applying a message to a thing that doesn't necessarily have a message, like doing all these things that players do, or doing all these things that designers do. When it gets to that point and it explains it in a more concise manner, the previous 80% of the game feels necessary all of the sudden. It's a very odd concept, and it's what, for me, elevates the beginner's guide above just, masturbatory work of art into something that is actually helpful and meaningful to people. I think.
So, I mean, it makes sense. Everything you're saying. I'm glad we have kind of two different perspectives on the game.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I just felt like I saw it differently, but I saw a part of myself in it in a different way.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about it is that I saw a part of myself in it. You saw a part of yourself in it. Probably two completely different parts. Yeah. And yet it's still meaningful because in the end it kind of tears that down.
Yeah.
And says, well, don't do that because you're just going to find a reflection of yourself in a thing that wasn't made to be a mirror. It was, I don't know, it's very odd. And I actually really, really like it and think that the game's really important, though it does have two pretty major problems in my eyes.
Okay. So, at this point, Davey is showing off Coda's work.
Yeah.
And he's very happy about all the appreciation he's getting from people, saying, oh, this is really great, even though it's not, technically. Like, they're really dumb little levels, so I don't know what people would be saying about them. Out of context, they absolutely make no sense at all.
No.
And he's very happy, but at the same time, I mean, they're not his levels to be showing off.
Yeah.
And I think that this is like the turning point. It is the turning point of the game because it's the very next thing is the tower.
Yeah.
Throughout the game, it's telling you years.
Yeah.
When these levels were from 2008 to 2011.
Yeah.
And this one in particular is in June 2011, which I find very coincidental because a month later, the Stanley Parable mod came out, and I wonder how much of that creation of that game is a reflection in this.
I'm sure a lot of this is about making the Stanley Parable.
Yeah.
And
I guess
the feedback that he got afterwards.
Yeah. And so I don't think that these levels really exist.
No.
As it's being shown, I think that is a commentary on making the Stanley Parable and going through the process of creating the game. And he was probably, like most people, depressed during that time frame. I mean, often it takes depression to become creative because you're trying to get an outlet to, solve your depression. I know that in middle school, that teen angst that I had, I spent it writing a lot. And not a lot of it was happy.
Just Green Day, just Billy Joel Armstrong fanfic.
Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to kiss him. On the lips.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry. I spent a lot of time writing in middle school. And not always sad stuff. Sometimes it was really happy stuff and just whatever. I just felt like writing a lot. And that really carried on later. But after, I started to really adjust and get those hormones under control, I didn't really have the drive to write as much as I did then. Like, I always try to do the NaNoWriMos. That's the National Novel Writing Month, for those not in the know.
Jesus Christ. I was like...
Every November.
Nano machines.
Yeah. So NaNoWriMo is something I always try to do, but I can never complete. And I sometimes wonder if maybe back then I could have done it with the amount of writing that I was doing then. It's just, that's the kind of thing I got from this is the person losing the creative control.
Oh.
Or not even the creative control, but the creativeness of their self. Like, because I'm not a creative person, so it's like, oh, but I know that in middle school I could draw, but I can't draw now. It just seemed like this person has lost it because he became happy. He released a Stanley Parable. It's complete, but what do you do from here? You've completed this chapter and you're trying to move on. Like, how do you follow up a game like that?
And I think that is the central idea for the Davey Coda being the same person. Like, the actual narrative. I keep saying that word. It's not the actual narrative because I think both narratives are equally valid.
Yes, I think it is two separate but valid narratives, no matter how you look at it.
So there's not an actual narrative, I don't think. They're both equally valid. But the one that you're talking about, I feel like, is the Davey, Red, and Coda being the same person. Davey really talking about himself kind of narrative, which is really about himself.
Yeah.
Versus the narrative that the game presents, which is Davey, Coda, two separate people. Davey is a friend of Coda.
Yeah.
Is all talking about the reception of the Stanley Parable.
Mm-hmm.
Where people are just constantly putting all this extra meaning and all this extra stuff, like what we're doing right this moment.
Yeah. I mean, really, because
it's exactly what we're doing, and there's no way around it. And I don't think that that's bad, but this game isn't really trying to say that it's bad. It's more portraying the frustration of it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I can't control it. I can't control all the little different things that you don't get.
Mm-hmm.
I can't possibly do it. You can't possibly see what's in my head.
Well, it's that, and it's he's putting things in there that have a meaning to him, like the light posts have a meaning to somebody.
To somebody, yeah.
But the player might put their own meaning in it, and It's not his meaning that he wants portrayed. But there's no way for him to explain it because the fans will be right. It's their meaning behind it. Like,
well, and that's the point, because you notice light posts, right? Davey, the character Davey, never goes, okay, and this is what the light post means, like he does with everything else.
Yeah.
Because it's something he added.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if...
I didn't think about that before, but now that you say that, I think that is probably what that's about, is like people putting their own shit in, and it's always going to be right because it's whatever I want it to be.
Yeah.
Like, I'm presenting my own idea of what it is, and, I can't explain it.
It's like Davey, for me, like if you want to go with the Davey Coda same person, it's Davies goes back to look at all these games that he's made over the years, and it's like, what can I do to improve these?
Yeah.
After the fact, after he's no longer creative, he's lost that part of him and what his mind was when he made these things. What can I do to enhance these? Oh, I'll put a lamppost at the end of them. That'll be unique. That's my little flavor on it. That's my thing. Because there's like the 3 little dots on some levels if you play it. Mm-hmm. There's just 3 dots. They're never explained. What does it mean? He doesn't even know. He doesn't even explain it.
Yeah.
Only Coda knows what he was thinking at that time, which is, again, in his sadness, that's what he came up with. I don't know if he was sad, but what I'm saying? And so he's trying to reconcile, and he's trying to like make these his so that he can say they're his, but they're not really his. Like he's not the same person he was when he made those, but he puts his little flavor on it. Here's a lamppost.
Yeah.
And then eventually, like, we get to the tower, which is a very strange sequence because I don't know if I understand how it could be one person doing that, but I don't know. It's a very strange sequence where I think it's like to me he's writing a message to himself, like it's over. We got to move on. So basically, the tower is this final level that was given directly to Davey, I believe. Mm-hmm. And he's like, here's this zip file. By this point, levels are coming out so far and few between that you can tell that Coda is no longer making stuff anymore. He's kind of just done. So he makes this last level, his last hurrah, and he gives it to Davey, and it's impossible to beat. It's like you do these puzzles that are really annoying.
Yeah, there's a maze that's invisible.
An invisible maze that resets every time you touch a wall.
Right.
So it's super annoying.
Yeah, it's impossible. There's a bunch of it's not impossible until the very last room, where it is literally impossible because there's a button on the other side.
Yeah,
you literally have to to beat the game. If it were a real level, you would have to break the game to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas all the other ones, they're horrifyingly annoying, but people have done dumber things and beaten it without breaking it.
Yeah.
Whereas this last one, it's not possible. You have to go out of bounds. You have to put no clip on, or you have to have this, all-knowing, all-powerful narrator.
Mm-hmm. So this part is
This is the part that I was talking about.
Yeah.
Where he's leaving all those notes.
Yes, exactly. This sequence is eye-opening. It changed my entire perspective. The first time I played the game, I was like, whoa, what? Because now you're no longer getting a direct commentary on Coda from Davey. You're getting these texts on the wall that are direct commentary from Coda to Davey. And it feels very strange and intimate, and you're not supposed to see it. I mean, you're not. No one's supposed to see it. Like,
yeah.
Coda doesn't even want Davey to see it. He feels bad that he wrote all these mean things,
But he knows he's going to break it apart
because
and go over
it. And so he does it on purpose. It's brilliant. Like this little sequence where he
on
just,
multiple levels for both
Yes,
narratives.
yeah.
I think it's a very smart, good. This whole ending section is great. I think.
Yeah.
Everything from here until the end of the game is what turned me completely around on the game. I mean, you have these two people. You have the narrative between two people, this commentary between two people, or you have, like I said before, you have the narrative of Davey talking to players through the game.
Yeah.
And both are, again, equally valid, but both make so much sense, and that's what makes this whole game work and not fall into pretension. Even though it is about the self and about people, it suddenly feels less like I said before, like masturbatory work, where he's just going, look at how smart I am. I can make things that show me as a robot. Like, it stops being like that and is about doing that, kind of. It's very odd, and it really flips everything onto its head. And around this part is also where Davey the character sounds very depressed. He's going, yeah, and then this is this part. Because he does want to show you everything.
Yeah, he's like, you can hear him choked up in some of this part. Like, really, like, emotional, and it gets to you. I mean, you can tell that he is on near tears throughout this sequence, pretty much. I just want to read the first note. Mm-hmm. It says, Dear Davey, thank you for your interest in my games. I need to ask you not to speak to me anymore. So you get through that whole area, and that's the very first thing you see is this note, and it's like, what? Like, it's just very jarring because you don't really understand their relationship.
Yeah,
because he doesn't talk to Coda. He doesn't talk about Coda as like a friend that he talks to. It's just these games he plays from him. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a very strange moment to finally hear Coda talk, to actually put words together instead
they're not
of
coming out of Davey's mouth.
Yes, and then they're not, or via the game, like talking to itself. It just was like,
yeah.
At that point, I was like, this is not good. This is gonna get really depressed. Like, I think if it was me, I wouldn't be able to read anymore. I'd be too upset, like knowing that I'm a bad person, and that's what he talks about here.
Yeah,
Davey talking about how he's a bad person and that he took credit for all these things that he had made. Like, he felt good because he gave these games out to people, but like, Coda didn't want them out there. They're just like his little thing. If I had later, like if right now I took my notebooks from middle school and said, you know what, I'm gonna publish these, my middle school self would be
pissed,
torn asunder, and embarrassed because it's all bad.
In your eyes. I think the most important part about this section is that directly after this section is almost completely wordless.
Yeah.
Davey stops talking. Davey as a character, as a narrator in general, stops talking, and you just experience these sets of levels that have no name, no connection to each other. You don't even know who made them, really, because it doesn't say, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who made them. It doesn't matter if Coda made them or Davey made them. They're just levels. They're just these weird areas that you just walk around. And we didn't even talk about the very first level.
Oh, yeah.
The very first
the
level.
Important one.
Yeah. The very first level has, what Davey as a character says is Coda's creative spark, is that he's making like a Quake-style level that happens to have a maze in it. And at the end of the maze, you do this thing. You're like a space marine, and you go into the reactor to start the reactor or to shut down the reactor. I don't know which one. And you die. And he says, and then a glitch happened.
Yeah.
Well, the glitch just talked. It's an unfriended joke.
I know. I'm going to freaking kill you. So, I was like, Why would you do this? You're on a roll.
And then a glitch happened. Because I can't hear the word glitch and not think of Unfriended for some reason. And then a glitch happens, and you start to rise above the ground. Clearly, that's not what actually happens. It's fabricated, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. Like, you, in the narrative sense, this is when Coda looks at something, and something happens inside of him where he starts making these levels. Is him dying and then rising above stuff. Maybe those are probably not the right words to use because that's not really what's probably happening in his head. But the character, dies, falls over, and then the body just keeps rising along with the camera, and you get to see the whole level. You get to see all the stuff.
There's a level before it that's just a Counter-Strike map.
Oh, right. I'm sorry. That's the first level.
There's like a first level, and it's the Counter-Strike map.
Yeah.
And then there's this one where it's kind of basic. Like, there's not a whole lot going on with it. There's no real meaning behind it. It's just generic shooter.
Except for a maze.
Except for this annoying maze that you hit enter and you skip because it's stupid. And I love that he says that. And he's just like, here, skip this maze. It's really annoying. Why is there a maze on a spaceship? And you get to that last moment, and he gets in, and he steps into like the reactor or whatever, and he just starts floating.
Yeah, well, he dies and starts floating up.
Well, he dies, and he's like, but that's not what happened. And he goes back, and he goes, this is what really happened. And he goes in, and he starts floating. He's like, oh, this is what was supposed to happen. You're supposed to die and then finish the game, but instead of dying, you start floating. Right. So he's like, reset.
Well, that's what I mean. It's a glitch.
Yeah.
In the narrative sense, it's not really a glitch.
What do you mean?
Like, it's not, it's...
Are you saying that it's not a glitch that intentionally...
No, it's intentionally a glitch. It's not something like it's just weird for me to look at it because I'm like,
I know it's not a glitch.
You know what I mean? But like, it's weird. It's a weird.
But it's a real for this character. It's a real glitch.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Is in the narrative sense, it's a glitch.
Yeah.
But not in reality. It's just odd.
Clearly, it's not in reality because it's in Source, and that would never happen. It couldn't possibly have random shit like that happen in Source Engine. Fuck you.
So you go above it. And you can see all the stuff. You can see the maze. You can see the end and the beginning of the maze. Now that you're above it and you're looking down, it's so easy to solve.
Yeah. And
it's funny because as the game ends, you go into the exact same thing as that level.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
The very last object on the screen, like on your journey, is that same reactor.
Yeah, and you go into it and you rise above, and everywhere it's a really, really beautiful moment because this game, the beginner's guide as a game, is emulating early Source games. It doesn't look pretty. It's early, not just early Source games, early Source mods. Everything built in Hammer looks fucking blocky and looks like shit, and everything is an Half-Life 2 model that's just being repurposed. So everything it never looks graphically impressive or good looking at all. And then out of nowhere, this ending section, as you rise above it, is this gigantic maze that stretches on in all different directions, endlessly. And above you is this really, really pretty, like, void and sunset and stars. And, like, it's weird because it's a moment that looks so different from the rest of the game. And you look down, and I still don't really know what I'm not confident enough to be able to say what it means. Because I just don't know, and I think that might be part of it. Is that I don't feel comfortable, especially after what happens just before it.
Yeah,
where it's yelling at the player essentially for attributing all this meaning and stuff, and then it gives you this beautiful moment, and I feel like it's just telling you just relax and take it in. There's meaning in here somewhere, but it's for me.
Yeah,
take it in, and if you want to experience it, you can. Because he lets Davey as a character experience his games. He just doesn't want them to be shit on.
Well, just before this, I'm sorry, I'm going to interject a little bit. There was another note that I just wanted to read. There's a bunch of notes, but this is the other one that really meant something to me, I think. It just before you go on this little spirit journey where there's no talking, it says, the fact you think I'm frustrated or broken says more about you than about me. But I do hope one day it clicks and that you make peace with this thing you are wrestling.
Right. Which is what I mean by it's about projection. Because you're projecting your own emotions onto other people's artwork.
When you find what I'm talking about, don't say anything.
Yeah. So we are directly destroying exactly what this game's about, which is beautiful in and of itself, kind of.
And that's the kind, like the final sequence I feel like was built by Davey. Coda's gone, he has to move on, and he ascends above all of Coda and takes on a new turn in his life. He closes his chapter. And he does it without the doors.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either, but it's fun to think about.
Dr. Langskalov.
Yeah, probably for the best that we move on quickly.
Yeah,
before we sound any more pretentious.
To be fair, I mean, both of these games, we instead of just playing one game, because they're both like an hour, one of them's 30 minutes, not even.
Yeah.
And then Stanley Parable is as long as you want it to be. We've condensed them all three. And again, full disclosure, we had already played Stanley Parable. Beginner's Guide and Dr. Langskalov is what we're playing new. Dr. Langskalov we played the most recently, literally just before this podcast.
Well, I had played Beginner's Guide when we started this.
Yes.
And I did not realize what I was getting into and that I would beat it and go, oh, that's over.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't really have a reason to at the time. But it was nice that we had this little
hiccup where one of us is horrible at playing RPGs.
Yeah, and that we can actually play one really short game that we aren't talking about at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and we're actually talking about two other games that we really wanted to talk about. So it worked out really well.
Oh, hey, wait. I really like Dr.
I know you do. I can't wait for you to talk about it because I got nothing sad.
So the second game was just released, and what?
The second game?
Okay. I'm not considering Stanley Parable as one of the games because we only went back to play Stanley Parable as a context because after the second I finished Dr. Langskalov, I realized this game, just like the Beginner's Guide, is a reaction to having made Stanley Parable.
Yeah. It was like two separate creators venting out what they felt.
Yeah.
Yeah. The end. Shut it down. We're done here.
So Dr. Langskalov, what's interesting about it is that right from its name, it says, its subtitle is A Whirlwind Heist. Every screenshot released for the game was of something from a heist, a van, a vault, a tiger cage, all this crazy shit. All of the press releases for the game were all for it as well. So, of course, I knew right away going in that it was not going to be like that at all. It was so obvious to me that clearly this is going to be some art game where you walk around and you look at something about games.
It's similar to the Stanley Parable trailer.
Yes.
When that came out, and it's like a ghost of a samurai. Like, what? Inhabit a bicycle.
So good.
And then you play the game, and it's none of that in there, thankfully. And I love that.
Yeah, I really like that about and that feels. You really get a feel when you're playing this game, especially after you play Beginner's Guide, where parts of Stanley Parable came from.
Yeah.
Like, that is very clearly a William Poe type deal.
Yeah.
Like, he has that irreverent comedy in him. But, so you play Dr. Langskalov. It's a very, very short 20-minute game that is free. And built in Unity. It is built in Unity.
Is it?
Yes, it is, because it has a Unity launcher
that
says, like, diamond, 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 emerald, 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 as instead of the fantastic settings. Which, again, it's that weird little attention to detail that I always like about, that I liked so much about Stanley Parable and that I like so much about this game, is the attention to detail in the comedy.
Yeah.
So it's a game about basically being backstage during a play.
Mm-mm.
I know it's
not.
not. Game. I know it's being backstage during a game. I know that, but I can't help. Again, full disclosure, I did a lot of theater growing up. 7 years of theater. And I cannot help but look at this and go, oh yeah, look at all these things that they feel like that. Like, when you're doing theater, it's very noticeable because you're doing just like what you're doing. You're running around, you're literally pulling, when you're making a game, you're setting up all these trigger volumes and things like that so that when a player walks into them, X happens or Y happens, and sometimes they don't, and you don't know why because you're not an engineer. You're just trying to make something.
Yeah.
And when it fucks up, you're like, fuck, I really don't know what's going on. You're not literally walking up to the rain making thing and pulling the lever and having the rain happen.
Yeah.
But in theater, you are. You're literally running up to things, and when you don't have enough people and everything's kind of jury-rigged and taped together, this is how it feels. It feels frantic, like you're running around and pulling the rain thing and it doesn't work, and you have to figure something else out that's bullshit. And sometimes things just work, and you don't know why, and you just have to go, oh yeah, I guess that's how the game is now, or I guess that's how the play is now. The people who are doing it are just gonna have to figure it out. And this game feels a lot like that, which I really appreciated. But it's really about being backstage during a game, like you said, and walking up to things as they don't really work because they're made by amateurs, and just trying frantically to fix things and have things go smoothly for the player, and they never really do. And on top of that, you as a player are constantly fucking things up just for fun, really.
As you do.
As you do as a
play
player.
With the environment. And
yeah, you play with the environment, you fuck up the narrative,
Anytime you have a dialogue in a game like Half-Life, you're going around picking up buckets and putting on people's heads.
Exactly,
and that's kind of what this, I think, is getting at.
This is very much about player and designer. There's no real, there's no second narrative in this, really. It's player and designer. You are very clearly playing the player while interacting with the designer. It's very weird in that sense, where it's like, it's as if a player, as we are players, were invited backstage to the game development party, and kind of given free reign.
It's very similar in tone to like those murder mystery things you go to these days. You've seen those? Like, they're in New York, I think, a lot. That seems like a big place where that happens. Basically, like, you go into like these trapped rooms, these like Saw-style rooms where you're trapped in a room.
That's not murder mystery.
But they have murder mystery ones.
Oh, okay.
That's
I was
what
going to say, because there's one over in where we are.
Yeah, in that place we live.
In that place we live.
Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry.
Oh, shit, I'm sorry. How many times are we going to say that?
Well, I didn't mean to tell them that we lived in Arkansas. Now they all know where we live. P.O. Box, fuck you, Arkansas.
Arkansas.
Anyway, we really.
But yeah, there is one over here.
Oh, we should do it sometime. But yeah, the murder mystery, like, there's stuff going on behind the scenes of it that are just like a play, but more confined, where you can't see into the play itself. You can only do the like the part with the elevator made me really think of that, because it's like, oh, it's. Like, he's probably coming in from one side, and then it's kind of moving a little bit, and then coming back out the other side, and it doesn't actually move.
Yeah.
But they have to think it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it felt to me.
Same thing with like I mean, that's really just a stage play, but you were in it.
But to me, it was, again, like that because there's no audience. There's no real visible group seeing all of it, because it can be much more abstract with you going around the levels and stuff. Like, to its credit, I think the level design is really great.
Yeah.
Like, as small as it all is, it feels like there's a lot going on, and you loop around on yourself a little bit, and you get a little disoriented, and I really enjoy that. Like, it works really well.
And I'm sure it's trying to say other things, but I think the main thing is just, player agency and player fucking with the wills of the designer. There is yet another narrator in this game. So this makes 3 in a row, all made by the same 3 people, all with narrators. Same 2 people, I'm sorry. All with narrators. This one goes back to the Stanley Parable style of it being funny and the narrator, or it being a comedy. Whether or not you think it's funny is subjective, but objectively,
I didn't think it was funny.
Yeah, I thought it was very funny, but objectively, it is a comedy. And the narrator is speaking as designer, but not, metaphysically speaking as designer. This time, he's not in control. like how the narrator in Stanley Parable is. And I think that's a reflection of the time. A little bit. You don't think so?
I got it. I assume that Davey was the level designer.
For what?
Stanley Parable.
Oh, yeah.
And that William was the writer. Right?
Well, they're both designer.
But I assume that William did more of the writing.
In fact, they're both credited as both, I think.
Yes, but I feel like based on these two games that we just played, that Davey is very much a level designer, and that's what he knows. So if you want to take his message another step, you could say that Coda might be the writer in their relationship, and that he doesn't have the creativity to make something without him. But I don't think that's the case. I think here is Davey's a level designer, and that he knows how to make levels, and that's about it. So his game is about making levels. And here we have William, who's a writer, who is more prominent at writing, but he makes levels, but his levels don't work as well because he's more focused on writing. Like some of the stuff doesn't work because I didn't know how to do that because I only know how to write things. I don't know how to make a game. Like that's how I interpreted it for me. Like these two people who I don't know anything about them.
Yeah.
But like, if I were to take it at like face value, that's how it feels. Like it's very like the second one's very creative and it's well written. Like I understand where they're going with it because it doesn't use any level gimmicks like the other one kind of does. Like it's very just press buttons. They don't do anything. Like the fucking telephone going up and down. Like that's because he doesn't know how to make a telephone animate. So it's him writing the game and using like the story to propel it versus the other one, which is the levels and how the level propels the story.
See, I don't think that. I don't think
they're attached to each other in any capacity. That's how I perceive it.
The Stanley Parable, especially the mod, again made by, I think the same two people.
Yes.
I mean both of them. I didn't know if it was made by. I don't know. I didn't know if both of them were credited as designer on
Stanley
the mod.
Parable,
on the mod.
I don't know either.
But I mean, you gotta remember, very, very small team. Nobody is just doing one thing.
Yeah, I understand.
Like, I really, I can. These feel like two halves of a game to me.
Yeah.
In both writing and design, I never felt in the beginner's guide. Oh, he can only do one thing and he can't write.
No, I understand.
Like, I understand what you mean. Like, I'm not saying.
I'm saying it as a perspective, not as that's what's actually happening. Just like it just seems like everybody's. Like, I'm better at writing than I am at making a game. You're good at making a game. Maybe you're not good at writing. I don't know. Together, we could probably write and make a game, and we could both use each other's skills. Like, I can make a level, like I've done it, but us together, we could make a complete game. And I feel like this is just like this little small commentary from both sides of what it's like to make a game without having the other person with you almost. Like, it just seemed like that to me. After playing all three consecutively, that's how it appears to me.
I think the issue is that you played Beginner's Guide and then Dr. Langskalov, or maybe the reverse, but playing Beginner's Guide so closely to it lends itself to having that narrative, whereas Dr. Langskalov on its own doesn't have that narrative to me at all.
Because they both feel like levels that are being created. It just had that same air to me because it's about a game being made. Like it's just a stage version of a game being made. Like it just has, I don't know, it's just the way it appears to me. Again, I'm tainted by playing all three all at once in a single weekend.
Yeah, I think the issue is that, again, Beginner's Guide is so much about a individual person. Yeah. Whereas, again, this might be because, we have very different perspectives. This might be because of the fact that I'm very used to theatrical stuff and how it works and how it's a huge group effort. Everybody has to be on board 100%. And if something doesn't get done, it doesn't matter. Somebody else needs to fix it. Like, everything needs to get done. And this is partially in the narrative of the game itself. If you walk around and you pick up notes, that's what all the notes are about. All the notes are about people not being there. This is why the game isn't working right.
But that's what I'm getting at, too.
But not in the same kind of way. It's not about
I understand.
an individual person. It's about we're making indie games.
Yeah.
We don't have the 3,000 animators sitting here animating a thing. Like you said, you can't animate a phone because we don't have the capacity.
Yeah.
We literally can't do it. We're so few people.
But I'm just seeing it more personal because I played all three.
Again, yeah, that's what I was saying.
And I mean, I'm not discrediting you in any way. That's just my perspective on it.
I just don't see it. Like I don't see the personal message from Langskalov like I do in Beginner's Guide.
I clearly transposed it on there, but it just playing it and thinking that way, I saw that, especially the second time I played through it because I played it so fast apparently.
Well, and the reason I got kind of defensive about it is because Dr. Langskalov, I never feel like William Poe is. I know you're not saying he's bad at level design or bad at one or the other, but it definitely doesn't feel like he is one half like
no.
One half of a team, like one half writing and one half level design.
I'm not saying that at all. It narratively that's how it feels slightly like these two games. If you play them back to back, it's like the opposite perspectives almost. One person dealing with it one way and the other one person dealing with it. It's just the way I see it. Like, I'm not saying that's real. That's just my, See, I'm taking the beginner's guide and fucking it now, just like the fans of Undertale.
Yes. I just see, I feel I see when I play Langskalov the level design. Like I see, I don't know. It's hard to describe because I don't feel anything missing there.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like in the beginner's guide, it's obviously incredibly well written, although it's meant to look naturalistic.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel well written because it feels like someone who's just writing a thing, or not even writing it. It's made to sound like he's just talking about it, even though you know that it's written.
Yeah.
So clearly the writing is there, but it's about level design. Whereas Langskalov isn't about one or the other.
No.
That's why that's where I'm missing that connection.
But see, like I think that's the thing with this game is like there's no real visuals. It's all writing. Like it has visuals, yes, but like the game itself is a commentary on like it's just like it has no visuals in the sense of that there's no real game there. It's all the background of the game. I don't know. It's just the way I saw it. It just seems strange,
that's so
to have
much
these
about level design. Like that's why I don't feel like there's like that missing piece in it because everything about it is about level design as well. It's just
if he wasn't talking, would that game make any sense?
Yeah, for sure.
If he's not explaining why you're doing all this?
Yeah. Definitely. You're walking around and if you're saying there wasn't a narrator but there could still be visual cues and sound cues, which there are. Like
same game, but without the talking. Because how would you get those cues?
Well, that's part of the level. That's the design of the game in total. I don't think would you know what was going on in Beginner's Guide?
No.
But so then you're saying that they're both about writing.
Well, I guess you can, but you could write visually. I guess.
Yeah, but that's level design.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like. You know what I think if you walked into the room that has the elevator thing, you know what to do. When someone gets in, you press the elevator go up. You don't need a narrator to cue you.
No.
You know what you're supposed to be doing because it's supposed to feel natural. It's supposed to be this natural thing that just happens. The player who stepped onto the elevator knows what's supposed to happen when he gets into an elevator. You as the, not surrogate level designer, but surrogate person who's working, I guess, you would be the underling level designer, basically. Yeah. The person who literally builds it and scripts things. Walks up, you know what's supposed to happen. It's just whether or not you can make it work.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean is it never feels like there's that missing portion about level design because this game feels so much about not just level design, not just writing. It feels like game design. Like it feels like what it feels like to design an independent game with all these little things and doohickeys running around and doing all this bullshit and kind of the over
you make a lot more sense now. I'm thinking about it. Like what you said makes sense. Like it's the creative drive when you run into a problem and how do you solve it? Like I don't know how to do this, so how do I solve this? Like how do I make something work in this situation? The elevator, like we can't animate an elevator going down.
Right.
So the elevator stays in one place, and you just close and then open the doors.
Exactly.
Like, it's how do we cheat it creatively
which is
without the player knowing that that's what we're doing?
Which is an independent game thing, whereas a AAA studio just makes the fucking elevator go up.
Or they turn your body into a train.
Yes, if they're shitty. Well, to be fair, that is, it shouldn't exist, but to the...
Yeah, maybe they should make a new engine.
To the producer's discredit, Bethesda needs to make a new game, or a new engine. To the level designer's credit, I mean, they made it work.
Yeah.
Can't fault them for that.
It just... How can a, little studio be more creative than this AAA? I don't know.
Well... And what I mean by it feels a little bit like a product of the times, both Stanley Parable and this. Stanley Parable was kind of made during a time where there weren't all these Kickstarter games that were overly ambitious.
Yeah.
And they can't do it. They can't create this whirlwind heist. They don't have the capacity. They don't have the people. They don't have any of that. You have to resort to running around and jury rigging things. And I think you hear that a lot in the narrator, whereas the Stanley narrator is very... All right, this is what you're going to do. If you're not going to follow me, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's not really taking you backstage so much. Whereas this is, the narrator is constantly flustered. He's constantly like, oh, we don't know. Oh, fuck. I can't believe he got through that so quick. Okay, move on. We got to go to the next area. Like, it feels like somebody who's trying so hard to make something and it's just fucking up constantly. And it feels a little bit like that. At the same time, it does feel like the beauty of all of this shit that shouldn't work coming together and it technically working.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's funny. Like, and sometimes it doesn't, which is what the ending is about. Which is, you close the thing and the player who came after you is just like, fuck it, release the tiger right away, and you die. But every once in a while, which is your playthrough, everything just comes together, kind of.
Yeah.
Even though it shouldn't, and it makes a game that's good. There's a lot of those art through adversity style games, like Majora's Mask, which I want to talk about again. Majora's Mask, where it's a game where they only had a year to make it, a full-fledged Zelda game, and so they said, "Oh shit, how do we fucking put this all together?" And through the adversity of having such a small time limit,
they put a time limit on the game.
But they made something creative that really shouldn't work. That's held together with nothing, really. It's held together with previously used assets, but and that's a AAA game doing that. A lot of these indie games are literally held together with Legos, and they really shouldn't be, but they still make a thing.
Yeah,
and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they can't.
Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad game.
I know that the comedy doesn't resonate with you.
It just didn't click with me, and that's... I mean, it's not against it. It just didn't... I didn't feel anything for it, sadly. I wish I did, but... I played it twice just to see if I missed it, but I think that might have been part of the problem was I came off the beginner's guide, which is very...
way heavier.
Tonally dark and heavy, and I'm, waiting for that to... coming from the same people, and it's... Oh, this is kind of lighthearted, but also not... funny to me, and I wish it kind of was, but and then there's a secondary commentary on it, and it's even worse and unbearable. That I'm sure someone found funny, but I couldn't see anyone laughing at it personally. But that's because I hate everything now.
I think Dr. Lang's Glove is A, good, and B, funny. Again, those are both really, really subjective.
Yeah.
It is kind of a shame that it's kind of just about games again, whereas the beginner's guide feels a lot more.
It definitely told a very personal story about depression, where this is like,
well,
video
it's not
games.
just about depression. It's also about game, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. It's just that the Stanley Parable already kind of did it. Now, this did add something new and unique, and this game is also free. Yeah. So I don't mind it so much. Like, it's allowed to retread old ground if you're going to be free and still offer me a couple laughs. Like,
yeah.
There's a section where you're turning off all these different bullshit buttons and punching in numbers that feels very Stanley Parable, but it has a unique twist, whereas the narrator also doesn't know what's going on. Whereas Stanley Parable, when you do the button ending where you're running around pressing all the buttons, he reveals at the end, none of these buttons do anything.
Yeah, they don't matter. You're still going to get blown up again.
Like, because that feels very malicious, whereas this doesn't feel malicious. He's as scared as you are that none of this is going to work, which is probably very indicative of how indie designers feel nowadays, where it's just like, I don't know either. I hope to God this isn't fucking broken to hell.
Yeah.
Like, we said that we were going to release this in a couple weeks, and we gotta.
Yeah.
So I hope that this bullshit that we created works correctly. Otherwise, you're going to complain about it on Twitter.
Yeah, I really should have played Dr. Langeskov first.
Yeah.
I think I discredited it because of that, but...
Yeah, I had played the beginner's guide before, like weeks before.
Well,
Like, not right when we started this, but...
It came out like 2 months ago. You played it when it came out. You played it before we started all this, and we started this in, like, April.
No, I thought we started this.
Not in April. Sorry, April is the wrong number. November. When did we start? Yeah, early November. But you'd played it.
Oh, right.
Before that, and I had played it just after we started.
Oh, okay. Yes, good point. Sorry.
I don't know if if I'm breaking anything.
No. I had said I'm a big fat liar now because I had said that I had played it during. It doesn't really matter. It was right around that time.
It was close. I'm not saying that you played it. We were working when we had worked on this idea as well, so it makes it even more confusing.
We're frauds.
Yeah. When we were trying to do it with a whole nother thing, and it didn't really pan out that well. So when we started over, it all kind of blurs together frauds. When we did it.
We're frauds. Everybody unsubscribe.
We've already played all these games.
Everybody unsubscribe.
Every game we played, we've already played.
Yes, every game. We just watch YouTube video. We just watch Let's Plays.
We just
that's all we do.
PewDiePie playing the game.
Yeah.
Who doesn't understand it at all, and then we try and go, that's what it means.
I get it now. So yeah, full disclosure, we're fucking frauds. You should come to our house at
P.O. Box.
P.O. Box. Fuck you. Murder us in our sleep. Anyway, and it's funny because Dr. Langskolov is the game that we really played for this, and we don't have nearly as much to say about it.
Well, it's a shorter game, so
yeah. Again,
it seems like it has more to it than it's letting on with the ARG stuff because there's still stuff coming out.
There's still stuff happening with it.
I don't know if there's another game that it's going to tie into, like the actual heist, which I doubt, and I hope it doesn't. Like, I'm wondering what else there is, but at the same time, I'm not going to put any effort towards it because I already got fucked by Never Be Game Over. I'm just kidding. I didn't fall into that. The quote-unquote meta ARG for Metal Gear Solid 5 that's not real, and finally that Ruse Cruise has finally sunk.
The Ruse Cruise has set sail and then sunk. And right into the Kojima iceberg and sunk.
The Konami iceberg. Yeah. The one where they said, don't talk about this game anymore.
Don't talk about this game. It's dead. Yeah. This is clearly an advertisement for Crow's new game.
Yeah.
Whatever they're making, this is kind of an advertisement for it. And it, for me at least, really, really succeeded in that.
I mean, I'm interested in another game if they can keep up the quality.
It needs to be said that the visual quality in this game is really good, I think.
I'm just hoping that they have two better narrators than the two they had.
Well, I mean, it's really just one narrator and one bonus track thing.
Yeah, who narrates longer than the narrator.
Yeah.
Because literally you have to wait for him to finish before you start another tape. And by that point, the guy has already done talking.
Yeah.
Like, it's unbearable.
Now, the big thing I want to talk about here is that both games feel like they have something missing. And it's not, I don't see it in a design aspect as much as it's a tonal aspect.
Okay.
So, Beginner's Guide lacks any comedy. And you know, that seems like a stupid thing to say, especially considering the story of Beginner's Guide. It lacks that little bit of humanization that it could have, because no matter what you do joke around. Like, we're talking about this shit, we're joking around. Like, you joke around a little bit. You have a little bit of fun in yourself. The Beginner's Guide lacks it entirely. And it's no real fault of the Beginner's Guide. It's something I don't really like about it. Well, it's not, let me reiterate. It's not that I don't like it. It's just that I feel like it's missing it, which is a distinction that I feel like needs to be made. It's not that it's bad without it. It's just that it feels like it's supposed to be there almost. And likewise, Dr. Langsklov feels like it's missing any of the bitterness or any of the biting commentary that Stanley Parable and Beginner's Guide have.
Yeah.
So it's really funny, and again, I don't know if that's because I'm aware that it's two different people who both worked on the same project, but Stanley Parable, going back and playing it, you feel the maliciousness in the narrator. And you feel the comedy. And it's like, Dr. Langskalov has all that comedy.
I feel like that's part of like my two halves I was getting from
Yeah.
it feels to me like there are two separate things at play here.
Yes. And
two different creative
which
minds.
I totally agree with. I just don't see it as an individual department design type deal.
No, but again, like I saw it as that sort of like the two halves of these two games, like how they could be two different commentaries if you wanted.
Yeah, well, it feels like they're both missing a little bit of something tonally.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of something. Like, what made Stanley Parable special are those moments when it wasn't being funny.
Yeah. The times it's not funny are what makes it special. This, like the room where you go in and there's the stars.
Yes.
And then you go and kill yourself. And it's really sad, and it's like...
And it's funny right before it's sad. Like,
oh, yeah.
You wouldn't get there. You wouldn't get there if it weren't funny. And you wouldn't have such a good time playing it if it weren't funny. But at the same time, it would never stick with you if it didn't have those bitter moments.
If it didn't punctuate the humor with a very real moment.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, those are all of the endings that stick with me. I still, to this day, remember the exactly how I felt when those things closed on me in the death ending.
There's that, and then one of the first endings I got, I went down the stairs.
Yes, that one too, which feels
the insanity one.
Yeah, that one sticks with me too.
Just before he's explaining exactly what's going on, and like how you feel as a player, like you realize that you are just playing a game, or that this is a dream. And that you can fly through the stars, and you lift up, and and the stars appear. And I was like, "Whoa, this is such a weird, cool sequence." And then at the end, it turns out you're a crazy person in the street, and you're dead, and that you were somebody else the whole time, and this woman. And it's like, wait, what? And it comes out of nowhere and punctuates this kind of like moment of like, "Oh, you're free thinker," and then no, you're actually a crazy person.
Well, and that's part of the narrator going, you see, I control you, fucker. Yeah. Like, I get to say whatever you do. You dare defy me at this moment, like, you're going to go down here, you're going to be a crazy person.
Yeah.
I get to say what happens to you in the end. What's even worse is in the mod, where, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't really remember. I haven't played the mod in a really long time, but I remember that moment for some reason, having a lot of red. I'm pretty sure it turns your screen red. It felt way more claustrophobic in the mod.
Yeah.
In fact, when I went down the stairs in the new game, I felt this rush of anxiety because of the anxiety that I felt when I played the mod. Because it feels, for some reason, a lot more anxious. This one has a lot more... It's got more comedy moments that punctuate it, which makes it feel a little bit less horrifying. But yeah, both games are just missing a little bit of something.
Yeah.
And I think it's what the other half contributed to Stanley. And it's funny that these games are both about Stanley, and Stanley is kind of about, now in retrospect, both of these games.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me, and that's kind of why when I fucked up and didn't beat Chrono Trigger, I went, oh shit, let's play a game real quick. This is the game I wanted to play because I thought there was a lot of cool stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
Which there is, because I think we talked a million years about Beginner's Guide.
We did. We're almost up to 2 hours.
Oh, fucking hell.
Did not think we'd talk this long.
And that's Goodnight Channel.
In conclusion, I think that of the three, I think the Beginner's Guide is one of my favorite games I played this year. Sorry, that didn't make any sense.
No. I was like, what? Of these three, Beginner's Guide's my favorite that released this year.
Yeah, I fucked up. The Beginner's Guide.
But, Stanley Parable's my favorite that released in the year 2013. So,
That I played this year, I think the Beginner's Guide's one of my favorite games.
Well, of those three, which one is your favorite?
The Beginner's Guide.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm sorry. I had a
Wait,
seizure.
You like Beginner's Guide more than you like Stanley Parable?
Yeah.
Even though the Beginner's Guide touched me more, right on the dick dong, even though it touched me and it gripped me, and it ripped the skin a little.
Oh, shit. shit. I'm sorry.
Even though it did that, I still like Stanley more because Stanley's a fully fleshed out idea, whereas I can't shake the feeling that Beginner's Guide's missing a little something.
I mean, it lacks humor, but I mean, sometimes things just aren't funny.
Well, no, I agree. And again, I think I don't know if I'd feel that same way if I didn't know that this is Davey and William who made Stanley Parable, and I know what both halves of them.
I think the problem coming from personal experience, I think that the Beginner's Guide hits a little more personal note. Again, I played Stanley Parable when it released.
So did I.
So
the day it released.
For all intensive purposes, I mean, for all intensive purposes, I think that the Beginner's Guide right now in 2015 means more to me than the Stanley Parable did to me in 2013. I mean, as a person who has suffered from depression, I feel like it really spoke to me in a unique way. Like, oh, you know, I really should get out and communicate with people and not stay inside and make games, make podcasts. No, it just punctuated a little harder than Stanley did in what I'm feeling right now in my life.
Yeah.
Not to say that I'm really depressed right now, but it just kind of like, oh, yeah, I've been there. Like, I get that feeling. Like, the moment where you realize, like, oh, I do depend on other people's creations to make me happy.
Well,
like,
yeah, that part definitely
like that really like right now this podcast wouldn't exist without you. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just seems a little bit more thematically appropriate to me right now. Stanley Parable was fun, and I enjoyed it. And I think it's a great game, and I played it in a group setting. It was a really fun thing to play. It's just, I think that the message that the Beginner's Guide gave me was much more potent and important.
I think that the messages of the Beginner's Guide is more important because
I
it's
think
not
that yes,
about
and I
games.
think that the gameplay of Stanley Parable is far above the superior of the three.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's a feature complete game, and I think that what I got from the third game, Dr. Langsgolf, blah blah blah. I mean, I really like the level design. It's visually one of the most pleasing games I've played in a while.
Yeah.
Just because it has these little elements that it all kind of works together, and buttons, and you press them. It just really scratched an itch of level design that, you know, I don't know where I'm going with that, so I'm just going to shut the fuck up.
Well, I think, you know, I think what Langsgolov has against it is that it feels very much like Stanley Parable. The humorous parts that a lot of people seem to talk about in Stanley Parable, you know, the broom closet end, like I find people talking about that ending a lot, and a lot of the funnier endings and funnier moments, and I find that same thing in Dr. Langsgolov where it's those moments condensed into one thing, but that's never what sticks with me in Stanley Parable. That's not what I think about.
It's hard to talk about the darker endings with people, though. Like, people don't want to talk about them.
They don't care.
Yeah, versus I really prefer those and would like to talk about them, and that's why I like the Beginner's Guide, and why we talked about it for so long is it's much more important to me.
Well, to Beginner's Guide's credit, it doesn't ever feel like Stanley Parable, other than that it happens to also have a narrator.
Yeah.
But it never feels like Stanley Parable, whereas Dr. Langofuck feels like Stanley Parable, which isn't bad, especially because it's, again, free.
Yeah. But it's similar to Gone Home. Like, you have a narrator game. You're going through, and it's very simple. You know what's going to happen with it, basically. Like, it's just, like, I feel like that the Beginner's Guide kind of stepped away from that style a little and brought a real meta message rather than a commentary message.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point.
I don't know. It's just,
well, Dr. Langsgolov generally feels like a commentary on games or like an explanation. Stanley Parable, I feel like, has both. That's why I like Stanley Parable more. Only because I feel like I get more out of it in the long run. Like, every single time I get something new out of it. And then once I feel like I've gotten everything out of it, I realize I got one more thing out of it, having played all of it.
Yeah.
So
I think the difference is that Stanley Parable tells you how to feel. versus the beginner's guide that doesn't.
No, I don't
Like
think
the
it tells you
narrator
how to-
often says things that persuade you towards a certain train of thought, like unplugging the phone versus picking up the phone. Like you get both of those, and he kind of tells you, "Oh, Stanley, this is what you're thinking." And he's like, "Yeah, I am thinking it, but you're not." Whereas this game doesn't treat you
I don't
to
think
think
Stanley,
a certain way.
I don't think Stanley Parable.
No, but it's
more often than not, it does not go down that road. It doesn't take that.
But every
cheap
once in a
route.
while, it does. And I
Yeah,
think
but again, that's of how many endings, like of
Yeah.
how many little messages it has. Very rarely does it resort to saying this is how you feel, and when
Yeah.
it does, it feels like that's not actually how you feel, and that's part of it.
yeah, it's true. You're right.
Whereas the beginner's guide, I don't expect it to have multiple endings, but I can't help but walk away from it and go, yeah, but Stanley Parable, I felt similar things and more often. Whereas I do feel, but at the same time, beginner's guide is more important.
Yeah.
I don't know. I kind of take it back. I would probably rather play Stanley Parable again than beginner's guide.
Yeah,
I don't know which
I
one
would probably not play beginner's guide one more time.
Yeah. I can't say for sure which one's my favorite. I don't think favorite's a good word to use when you look at Stanley Parable and Beginner's Guide. I can say for sure that Dr. Langskolov, regardless of how much I actually like it, is my least favorite of the three, and the other two are my most favorite, if that makes any sense.
I would definitely replay
So,
both Stanley Parable and Dr. Langskolov, though. Like,
It's
later
weird.
down the road,
Yeah.
I would play both again to go, hey, what was this about? Like,
Yeah.
what did I miss? And then, because, like, I mean, I hadn't played Stanley Parable since it released. I bought it on release.
Yeah, so did I.
And so replaying it, I was like, oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
forgot about some of these endings. Like, this is kind of funny, and this is kind of cool. Like, I completely forgot a lot of the stuff to the point that I looked up a couple of the endings. Like, how do I get this ending?
Yeah.
Like, and then going, oh, this is totally different than I remembered.
Yeah.
And I hope that maybe this game could do the similar. This game can do a similar thing to me, whereas maybe a year or two from now, I'll go back. Oh yeah, that 15-minute game I played. Let's check it out. Oh yeah, this actually is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And hopefully that it will
I think
be
it's
much more
real-
fresh compared to having just played it after the beginner's guide.
Yeah, it's real hard to play that after the Beginner's Guide,
Yeah.
which has a much more harder hitting message. Like,
So I mean, I'm not dismissing any of the three games. I think they're all, to their credit, really interesting games, and they all
do what they
present
try
a
to do
really interesting
well.
message.
Yeah. I
Except
agree.
one also presents like 24 messages.
Yeah. Like I said, I can't help but not dislike, but not like Langskolov as much as I like Beginner's Guide or Stanley Parable, only because it feels so much like Stanley Parable in its lighter moments, whereas Beginner's Guide hits a stride of its own that's unique.
Yeah.
But, I like all three games.
I like all three, vaguely. The last one's just a little weak for me, but it might be better. I don't want to discredit it after only playing it now. I can see that there is something there, and I really want to give it a second chance, a second wind in a year from now or more.
Yeah.
Like, if I go back, maybe if we ever do like a review episode of some of our favorite games,
Yeah.
maybe that's one of the ones I might pick up again because I know it's short and go, oh, you know what? I was kind of harsh on it. Not that I feel like I've said anything harsh here, but
Yeah. I know you were harsh to me. Right
and
after
I don't
you
think
played
that's
it.
fair to say those things because I know it's not entirely true.
But I mean, it's how you feel, and even though it's from when you played Beginner's Guide, it's a legitimate feeling that you get.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as important after you play, and
a game
at the
that
same
is
time, maybe
super
it's not
depressing.
trying to be important.
No. And again, and there might be more to it later down, and I'll go,
Yeah.
oh yeah, and maybe I'll add like a little blog post going, hey, by the way, here's some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's needed here. We've talked about these three games for 2 hours. How do we wrap it up?
Order 69 it.
Order 69 it. What a great joke. Keep that running. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh shit! I'm sorry. Oh god.
Yeah, so thank you for listening to Goodnight Channel. Tune in next time as we talk about Chrono Trigger for 5 hours straight, probably.
Tune in next time where PJ
Still hasn't beaten Chrono Trigger, so we're talking about something else.
still hasn't beaten a 20-hour RPG, but had no problem putting 60 hours into a game he fucking hated.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
Uh...
Oh, man. Bye.